The forest floor rose up to meet Esme's knees, and she barely caught herself against the rough bark of an ancient oak. Her breath came in ragged gasps, each one burning through her chest like wildfire. 7 days. 7 days since she'd been dragged before the Pack Council, her swollen belly on display like evidence of a crime. 7 days since Alpha Victor had pronounced her Omega status revoked, her pack bonds severed, her very existence declared unwelcome. Keep moving. Just keep moving. Her wolf whimpered somewhere deep inside, weak from exhaustion and shame. The creature that should have been her strength had retreated so far inward that Esme could barely feel her anymore. Maybe that was for the best. Maybe it hurt less that way. The baby kicked, a flutter against her ribs that sent both pain and fierce love cascading through her body. Esme pressed one trembling hand to the curve of her stomach, now prominent at 6 months. Her other hand gripped the oak bark until splinters bit into her palm. "I'm sorry," she whispered to the child who would be born into nothing. No pack, no father, no future. "I'm so sorry." She'd been such a fool. Luca had been handsome and charming, with silver eyes that promised forever. He'd courted her with wildflowers and midnight runs through the territory. He'd whispered that she was special, that her gentle Omega nature was exactly what he needed. She'd believed every word, had given him everything, her trust, her body, her heart. She'd even told him things about the pack's patrol routes and alliance negotiations, pillow talk she'd thought was harmless. Then he'd disappeared the same night Victor discovered a rival pack had used insider information to ambush their northern border patrol. 3 wolves dead, 5 more injured, and all evidence pointing back to the sweet words Esme had murmured in the dark, never knowing Luca was using her as a weapon against her own kind. By the time she'd realized she was pregnant, Luca was long gone. No one even knew his real name. The shame of it was a living thing, coiled around her spine. Victor hadn't even let her explain, not that there was any explanation that would matter. Traitor's whore, they'd called her. Spy's plaything. The pack members she'd known since childhood had turned their backs as the enforcers dragged her to the border and threw her across the territory line with nothing but the clothes she wore. At least they didn't kill you, she thought bitterly, though she wasn't certain survival was a mercy. Esme forced herself upright and stumbled forward. The sun had already dipped below the tree line, painting the forest in shades of purple and gray. She had no idea where she was going. The Silverpaw territory was somewhere ahead. She could smell the change in the forest, the way the pack markers shifted from Victor's bitter ash scent to something else, something wilder and cleaner, like winter wind and pine. The Silverpaw pack was an unknown. Rumors painted them as isolationist and fierce, their territory vast but their numbers mysterious. No one really knew how many wolves ran under their banner, only that their alpha king, Roman they called him, was not a wolf to cross. He'd held his territory for 12 years without a single successful challenge, which either meant he was the strongest alpha in living memory or the most ruthless. Probably both. Esme's vision swam. When had she last eaten? 2 days ago? 3? She'd found a stream yesterday and drunk until her stomach ached, but water couldn't sustain her forever. The baby needed more. She needed more. Her foot caught on an exposed root, and this time she couldn't catch herself. She went down hard, managing to twist at the last second so her shoulder took the impact instead of her belly. Pain exploded through her joint, and stars burst across her vision. The forest spun sickeningly. Through the ringing in her ears, she heard footsteps. Steady, measured, coming closer. No, no, please. Esme tried to rise, but her body wouldn't obey. Exhaustion, fear, and pain had finally exacted their price. She could only lie there in the dirt and leaves, one hand still protectively curved over her stomach, as the footsteps stopped beside her. "Child." The voice was ancient and female, creaking like old timber. "You've come far." Esme managed to crack her eyes open. The woman standing over her was impossibly old, her face a map of wrinkles, her hair white as fresh snow and hanging in a thick braid over one shoulder. She wore simple clothes that might have been brown or gray. It was hard to tell in the failing light. But her eyes were sharp and bright as a hawk's, amber gold and gleaming with something that might have been recognition. "Please," Esme rasped. "My baby will survive." The old woman knelt with surprising grace, her movements fluid despite her apparent age. She placed one weathered hand on Esme's forehead, and the touch was cool and soothing. "The child you carry will unite two bloodlines, and the king who claims what is not his by blood will break the ancient curse." The words made no sense. Esme's mind struggled to grasp them through the fog of exhaustion. I don't understand." "You will." The old woman's thumb traced a symbol on Esme's forehead. It tingled strangely, like pins and needles, and some of the crushing fatigue lifted. "But first, you must survive. Can you stand?" With the woman's help, Esme managed to get to her feet. The world tilted dangerously, but steadied. Through the trees ahead, she could see lights. Warm golden lights that spoke of shelter and safety, and things she'd thought lost to her forever. "The border patrol will find you in moments," the old woman said. She was already stepping back, melting into the shadows between the trees. "Do not fight them. Your destiny awaits, child." His destiny, the child's destiny, all woven together like the roots of the forest. "Wait." Esme reached out but grasped only air. The woman had vanished as if she'd never been there at all. Only the lingering tingle on Esme's forehead and the inexplicable surge of strength in her limbs proved the encounter had been real. Then the howls started, 3 voices rising in the distinctive pattern of Border Patrol calling an alert. They'd found her scent. Esme's wolf stirred weakly, torn between the instinct to run and the knowledge that running was pointless. She was in their territory now. There was nowhere left to go. The wolves appeared through the underbrush, 3 large forms moving with predatory grace. They circled her at a distance, lips pulled back to show gleaming fangs. Esme sank to her knees, submission, the only language that might save her life, and bowed her head. "Please," she said again, hating how her voice shook. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I need help. For my baby." The largest wolf, a massive brown male with a white blaze across his muzzle, shifted. The transformation was quick and practiced, leaving a man in his mid-30s standing where the wolf had been. He grabbed a pair of pants from a hollow in a nearby tree, patrol stashes practical, and pulled them on before approaching. His nostrils flared as he scented the air. His eyes widened slightly when they landed on her stomach. "You're pregnant." Yes. There was no point denying the obvious. "And alone?" The word was a knife between her ribs. "Yes." The patrol wolf exchanged glances with his still-shifted companions. Some wordless communication passed between them, the pack bonds Esme no longer had allowing them to share thoughts and impressions she couldn't hear. Finally, the brown wolf looked back at her. "What pack?" "No pack." The admission tasted like ash. "I was removed from the Nightshade Pack. Their territory is 7 days north." Recognition flickered across his face, followed quickly by wariness. The Nightshade Pack. Victor's pack. The pack that had just suffered a devastating betrayal. He knows, Esme realized with sick certainty. Word has already spread. "On your feet," the wolf said, his tone carefully neutral. "We're taking you to the pack house. The Alpha King will decide what to do with you." The Alpha King, Roman. Fear and exhausted hope warred in Esme's chest as the patrol wolves surrounded her, not threatening but definitely guarding, and began to escort her toward those distant lights. Each step was an effort, her body screaming its protest, but she forced herself forward. The old woman's words echoed in her mind. "The king who claims what is not his by blood will break the ancient curse." What king would claim a pregnant Omega cast out in shame? What king would look at another man's bastard child and see anything but disgrace? But the old woman had seemed so certain, and that strange symbol she'd traced on Esme's forehead had given her just enough strength to keep moving, to not give up completely. For the baby, Esme told herself as they walked through the darkening forest. Everything for the baby. She didn't let herself hope for anything more. The medical wing of the Silverpaw Pack House smelled like antiseptic and lavender, an incongruous combination that made Esme's nose twitch. They'd given her a bed with clean white sheets and a pillow that was softer than anything she'd slept on in weeks. The pack doctor, a woman named Sarah with kind eyes and steady hands, had examined her with thorough efficiency, pronouncing both Esme and the baby malnourished but stable. "You need rest," Dr. Sarah had said firmly, tucking a blanket around Esme's shoulders. "And food. I'll have something sent up." That had been 30 minutes ago. Esme had been alone since then, lying in the too-soft bed and trying not to think about what came next. Through the window, she could see the sprawling grounds of the pack house, larger than Victor's entire compound, with buildings spreading out in organized clusters connected by stone paths. Wolves moved between the buildings with purpose, their easy confidence speaking to a pack that felt secure in its strength. The Silverpaw Pack was everything the Nightshade Pack had pretended to be. Powerful, organized, united, and she was an intruder in their midst, carrying the evidence of her shame in her belly. The door opened without warning, and Esme's wolf surged to sudden alertness, a spike of awareness that was more intense than anything she'd felt in weeks. Her breath caught. The man who entered was commanding. That was the only word that fit. He stood well over 6 feet, with broad shoulders and a presence that seemed to fill the entire room despite the space. His dark hair was slightly too long, curling at his collar, and his eyes were a striking pale gray, like winter ice. He wore simple clothes, dark pants and a black shirt. But the way he moved screamed predator, alpha, king. This was Roman. Behind him came another man, slightly shorter but still imposing, with sandy brown hair and the watchful eyes of a born beta. Garrett, Esme's exhausted mind supplied, remembering the hierarchy of power. But it was Roman who held her attention. Roman whose eyes locked onto hers the moment he crossed the threshold. Roman who went absolutely still as their gazes met. Esme felt it like a lightning strike, a snap of connection so intense it stole her breath, so visceral she actually gasped. Her wolf, dormant and broken for so long, suddenly howled to life with desperate yearning intensity. Mate. No, that was impossible. That couldn't be. She was pregnant with another man's child. The mate bond didn't work like that. It didn't appear for wolves who were already claimed, already carrying. Roman's eyes flashed gold, his wolf rising to the surface. His entire body went rigid, and his hands clenched into fists at his sides. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, his chest rising and falling with deep, measured breaths, like he was fighting for control. "Sir?" Garrett's voice was cautious. He'd clearly noticed the change in his alpha. Roman didn't answer. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and stopped at the foot of Esme's bed. This close, she could see the fine lines at the corners of his eyes, the faint scar along his jaw, the way his pupils had blown wide with something that looked like shock and hunger and disbelief all tangled together. "What's your name?" His voice was deep and rough, scraping over her senses like velvet. "Esme." She barely managed to whisper it. Her heart was thundering so hard she was sure he could hear it. "Esme Thorne. Esme." He said her name like he was tasting it, rolling it around in his mouth. His eyes dropped to her stomach, to the obvious swell of pregnancy beneath the blanket, and something complicated flickered across his face. Pain. Anger. But not at her. Never at her. She could somehow sense that through the bond that shouldn't exist, the impossible connection that was singing between them like a live wire. "Who hurt you?" Roman asked softly, dangerously. The question caught her off guard. What? Someone hurt you." His eyes came back to hers, and the intensity in them made her shiver. Someone drove you to run pregnant through dangerous territory. Someone made you choose exile over staying. I can see it in your eyes. Who hurt you? Tears burned at the back of Esme's throat. She couldn't cry, she wouldn't cry, she'd cried enough over the past week to last a lifetime. It doesn't matter, she managed. I'm no one, just a refugee hoping for mercy. You're not no one. Roman's hands were still fisted at his sides, like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. You're... He cut himself off, jaw clenching. Behind him, Garrett was watching with open shock, his eyes darting between his alpha and the pregnant Omega in the bed. Sir, Garrett said carefully, should I... leave us? Roman didn't look away from Esme. Close the door. Make sure we're not disturbed. But the council will want... Leave us! It wasn't loud, but it was absolutely alpha, command ringing through every syllable. Garrett's spine straightened in automatic response, and he backed toward the door, though his expression was troubled. The door clicked shut, leaving Esme alone with the Alpha King and the impossible bond thrumming between them. Roman finally moved, walking slowly around the bed until he stood at her side. Up close, he was even more devastating. Power and control wrapped in skin and muscle, with eyes that saw too much. I'm going to ask you something, he said quietly, and I need you to answer honestly. Can you do that? Esme nodded, not trusting her voice. Do you feel it? His eyes searched hers. This pull between us? Her breath shuddered out. There was no point lying. He clearly felt it too, and denying it wouldn't make it any less real. Yes. Goddess help me. Roman's eyes closed briefly, his throat working as he swallowed hard. When he opened them again, they were glowing with his wolf's light. You're pregnant with another man's child. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. Yes. And yet my wolf is screaming that you're mine. The word came out rough and possessive, scraping over her skin and making her shiver. That you belong to me. That I should tear apart anyone who tries to take you away. Esme's hands clenched in the blanket. I don't understand this any more than you do. Then we'll figure it out together. Roman reached out slowly, telegraphing his movement, and placed his hand over hers where it rested on the blanket. The touch sent sparks racing up her arm. But first, I need you to know something. You're under my protection now. No one will hurt you here. No one will take you. And that includes whoever fathered your child. The fierce protectiveness in his voice made something crack open in Esme's chest. You don't even know me. I know enough. His thumb stroked over her knuckles, gentle despite his obvious strength. You ran 7 days pregnant and exhausted rather than stay somewhere you weren't wanted. You've been hurt and betrayed, but you're still fighting, still trying to protect your baby. That tells me everything I need to know about your character. I'm a traitor. The words burst out of her, bitter and sharp. My former pack cast me out because I gave information to a spy. I didn't know he was using me, but that doesn't change what happened. 3 wolves died because of me. She waited for the disgust, the rejection, the cold dismissal. Roman's hand tightened on hers. Then he's the traitor, not you. His voice was steel wrapped in silk. And if I ever find him, I'll kill him for what he did. The matter-of-fact certainty in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, it made her wolf purr with satisfaction. Why are you being kind to me? Esme whispered. You don't know if I'm telling the truth. I could be dangerous. You're not dangerous. You're terrified. Roman's free hand came up slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away, and cupped her cheek. His palm was warm and calloused, and it took every ounce of self-control she had not to lean into his touch. And you're mine, even if neither of us understands how or why. My wolf knows it. My soul knows it. Every instinct I have is screaming to claim you, protect you, keep you. I'm carrying another man's heir, she said desperately. needing him to understand the impossibility of what he was suggesting. Roman's eyes dropped to her stomach again, and this time when he looked back at her, his expression was fierce and tender, and absolutely certain. "Then I'll make that heir mine too," he said simply, "in every way that matters." The declaration hung in the air between them, impossible and perfect and terrifying. Esme's breath caught on something that might have been a sob, or a laugh, or both. "You're insane," she whispered. "Probably." Roman's thumb traced the line of her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. "But I've never been more certain of anything in my life. You're my mate, Esme Thorne, and I don't abandon what's mine." The suite Roman had arranged for her was nothing short of outrageous. Esme stood in the center of a bedroom 3 times the size of the one she'd grown up in, her bare feet sinking into carpet so plush it felt like walking on clouds. The bed was enormous, draped in deep blue silk that caught the morning light streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. Those windows overlooked manicured gardens that stretched toward dense forest, the view so beautiful it made her chest ache. And it was all far too much for someone like her. "The Alpha King insisted," Dr. Sarah had said when she'd escorted Esme from the medical wing an hour ago. The doctor's kind eyes had held something that might have been amusement or concern. Esme couldn't tell which. He was very specific about which rooms you were to have, the ones nearest to his own quarters, apparently. Esme had seen the massive double doors at the end of the hallway, dark wood carved with intricate wolf imagery. Roman's private rooms, close enough that he could reach her in seconds if needed. Close enough that her traitorous wolf purred with satisfaction at his proximity. Esme pressed both hands to her stomach, feeling the baby shift and settle. 3 days since Roman had declared her under his protection. 3 days since that impossible mate bond had snapped into place and turned her entire world upside down. She still didn't understand it. The moon goddess didn't grant mate bonds to pregnant wolves carrying another man's child. It went against everything she'd ever been taught about how the bonds worked. Yet she felt it constantly, a golden thread connecting her heart to Roman's, humming with warmth and awareness. She knew when he was near even before she heard his footsteps. She felt echoes of his emotions like whispers against her mind. Concern, protectiveness, and underneath it all, a fierce possessiveness that should have terrified her, but instead made her feel safer than she'd ever felt in her life. "You're being a fool," she told herself firmly. "You trusted a man before, and look where it got you." Luca's silver eyes flashed through her memory, followed immediately by the cold contempt in Victor's face as he'd cast her out. Men said pretty words, men made promises, and then men left, or worse, used those promises as weapons. A knock on the door made her jump. Before she could answer, it opened to reveal a young woman with Roman's same dark hair and striking pale gray eyes. She carried a tray laden with covered dishes that smelled divine, and her expression was openly curious. "You must be Esme," the woman said warmly, nudging the door shut with her hip. "I'm Lydia, Roman's sister. He asked me to bring you breakfast since apparently he's stuck in a council meeting and is growling at everyone about it." Roman's sister. Esme instinctively started to bow. Omega habits died hard, but Lydia made an exasperated sound. "None of that. Please." She set the tray on a small table near the windows and gestured for Esme to sit. "Roman said you're his mate. That makes you family. Family doesn't bow to family." The casual way she said it, his mate, made Esme's throat tight. "It's complicated. I imagine it is." Lydia uncovered the dishes, revealing eggs, fresh bread, sliced fruit, and what looked like honey-glazed bacon. Esme's stomach growled audibly. Lydia grinned. "Eat first, talk later. Doctor's orders. She told me to make sure you actually finish everything." Esme sat carefully and picked up a fork. The first bite of eggs was heaven, seasoned perfectly and still warm. She had to fight not to shovel the food into her mouth like a starving animal. Lydia settled into the chair across from her, watching with satisfaction as Esme ate. My brother's been impossible since he found you, she said conversationally, snapping at advisors, rearranging his schedule, personally reviewing security protocols. Garrett says he's never seen Roman this worked up about anything. Esme swallowed hard. I didn't ask for any of this. Of course you didn't. Lydia's expression softened. But you have it anyway. That's what the mate bond does. It doesn't ask permission, doesn't care about timing or circumstances. It just is. I'm pregnant with another man's child. The words came out flat and bitter. Your brother deserves better than that. My brother, Lydia said carefully, has been alone his entire reign. He's been challenged 17 times by wolves who thought being Alpha King meant you could take whatever you wanted. He's made alliances, ended wars, and built this pack into something powerful and safe. And through all of it, he's been isolated, untouchable. The crown instead of the man. She leaned forward, her gray eyes intense. Then you stumbled into his territory, and everything changed. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Esme's hands trembled around her fork. I'm terrified of trusting this, of trusting him. Good. Lydia's response surprised her. You should be careful with your heart. You've been hurt badly, I can see it. But don't confuse being careful with closing yourself off completely. Roman would never hurt you deliberately. He's the most honorable man I know. The baby kicked, a sharp jab against Esme's ribs. She pressed a hand to the spot automatically and saw Lydia's eyes track the movement. How far along are you? Lydia asked gently. 6 months. Esme's voice came out rough. It's a girl! Lydia's face lit up. A girl! Oh, Roman's going to be wrapped around her tiny fingers the moment she arrives. The image that conjured, Roman, fierce Alpha King, cradling a baby with infinite gentleness, made something warm and dangerous bloom in Esme's chest. She crushed it ruthlessly. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. Finish eating, Lydia said, standing. Roman will probably sneak away from his meeting the moment it's over to check on you, and he'll be insufferable if you haven't eaten everything. She left with a wave, and Esme was alone again with her thoughts and the too beautiful room and the mate bond humming steadily in her chest. He came at sunset. Esme had spent the afternoon exploring her suite, discovering a bathroom with a tub large enough to swim in, a walk-in closet someone had already stocked with clothes in her size, and a small sitting room with shelves full of books. She'd tried to read but couldn't focus, her wolf too aware of every sound in the hallway, listening for his footsteps. When the knock finally came, her heart leapt into her throat. "Come in," she called, proud that her voice stayed steady. Roman entered carrying another tray, this one loaded with dinner dishes. He'd changed since morning. Now he wore dark jeans and a simple gray sweater that clung to his broad shoulders. His hair was slightly mussed, like he'd been running his hands through it, and there were tension lines around his eyes. "You look exhausted," Esme blurted, then immediately wanted to bite her tongue. What right did she have to comment on how he looked? But Roman just smiled, a small curve of his lips that transformed his entire face. Council meetings have that effect. He set the tray on the table. "Have you been comfortable?" "Lydia said she brought breakfast, but I wanted to make sure you had dinner. You don't have to personally deliver my meals." Esme wrapped her arms around herself. "You're the Alpha King. You have more important things to do. Nothing is more important than making sure you're taken care of." He said it so matter-of-factly, like it was simply truth, rather than something that made her heart stutter. "Please, eat. We can talk while you do." She sat because arguing seemed pointless, and because the food smelled amazing and the baby was demanding sustenance. Roman settled into the chair Lydia had occupied that morning, watching her with those intense winter-gray eyes. "I need to ask you something," he said after she'd taken a few bites. "About the father of your child?" Esme's appetite vanished. She set down her fork carefully. "What about him? Do you know where he is?" His real name? What pack he belongs to? She shook her head miserably. I don't even know if Luca was his real name. He said he was a lone wolf passing through looking for a pack to join. Victor was considering accepting him. That's how we met. Her hands clenched in her lap. He courted me for 3 months. I thought he loved me. Roman's expression darkened, his wolf flashing gold in his eyes. He used you. Yes. The word was barely a whisper. I told him things, stupid things, pack business I overheard. I thought it was just conversation. I never imagined he was gathering intelligence for a raid. Tears burned, but she blinked them back furiously. 3 wolves died, Roman. Good wolves with families. Because I was too naive and stupid to see what he really was. You weren't stupid. You were trusting. Roman's voice was gentle, but his hands were fisted on the arms of his chair. He's the one who betrayed that trust. He's the one responsible for those deaths, not you. Victor didn't see it that way. Victor is a short-sighted fool who threw away a member of his pack when she needed protection most. Roman leaned forward, his intensity pinning her in place. Tell me honestly, did you know Luca was a spy? Did you give him information knowing it would be used against your pack? No, I would never. Her voice cracked. I thought he wanted to know about me. About my life. I never thought. Then you're innocent of betrayal. Roman's tone left no room for argument. You were seduced and manipulated by someone who knew exactly what he was doing. None of that is your fault. Esme wanted desperately to believe him, but the shame was a living thing inside her, coiled tight around her spine. I'm still carrying his child. You're carrying a child, Roman corrected softly. An innocent child who deserves love and protection regardless of how she was conceived. And I meant what I said, Esme. I'll be her father in every way that matters. The tears she'd been fighting spilled over. Why? Why would you do that? Roman stood slowly and crossed to her chair. He knelt beside her, bringing them to eye level, and took her hands in his. His touch sent warmth racing through her veins, the mate bond singing with pleasure at the contact. Because you're mine, he said simply. My mate. My wolf knows it, and my soul knows it. That means your child is mine too. I don't care whose blood runs in her veins. She'll be a Silverpaw. She'll be protected and loved and wanted. His thumbs stroked over her knuckles, just like her mother. Esme couldn't breathe. The conviction in his voice, the fierce tenderness in his eyes. It was too much, too overwhelming. I don't know how to trust this. Then don't trust it yet. Roman's lips quirked in a small smile. Trust me instead. Let me prove to you that I'm not like him, that I'll keep my promises. What if I can't? The question came out broken. What if he damaged me too much? Then we'll figure it out together. Roman lifted one of her hands to his lips and pressed a gentle kiss to her knuckles. I'm not going anywhere, Esme. I'm not Luca. I'm not Victor. I'm your mate, and I'll wait as long as it takes for you to believe that. The baby kicked hard, like she was agreeing with Roman's declaration. He must have seen Esme's reaction because his eyes dropped to her stomach. May I? He asked quietly. Esme nodded, not trusting her voice. Roman slowly placed his large hand over her belly, his palm warm through the thin fabric of her dress. The baby kicked again, a firm press against his hand, and Roman's entire expression transformed with wonder. Hello, little one, he murmured. I'm Roman. I'm going to be your father. Something broke open in Esme's chest, some wall she'd built to protect herself. This powerful alpha king, kneeling beside her chair with his hand on her pregnant belly and wonder in his eyes. It was too much and not enough all at once. She's active tonight, Esme managed to say. She knows her mother is safe now. Roman's eyes met hers, glowing faintly with his wolf's light. Both of you are safe. I swear it on my crown and my life. Nothing will harm either of you while I draw breath. Esme believed him, Goddess help her, she believed every word. They ended up on the balcony as midnight approached, neither of them ready to part. Roman had insisted Esme finish eating first. His concern for her health was endearing and slightly overwhelming. And then they'd migrated outside where the night air was cool and sweet, with the scent of night-blooming flowers. The moon was 3/4 full, casting silver light over the gardens below. Esme stood at the railing, Roman beside her, their shoulders almost touching. The mate bond hummed contentedly at his nearness. "What was it like?" she asked quietly. "Becoming Alpha King so young?" Roman was silent for a moment, his expression distant, terrifying. "I was 22 when my father died in a challenge. The pack needed strength immediately, or we would have been torn apart by rivals sensing weakness. I had to be ruthless when I wanted to be merciful, hard when I wanted to be gentle." He glanced at her. "I became the king they needed instead of the man I wanted to be." "What kind of man did you want to be?" His smile was sad. "Someone who could trust freely. Someone who could have a family without worrying that every person close to me was a potential target. Someone who could love without it being a political liability." He turned to face her fully. "Then you stumbled into my territory, pregnant and desperate and brave. And suddenly everything I thought I knew rearranged itself." Esme's breath caught. "Roman." "I know it's fast," he interrupted gently. "I know you need time, but I need you to know something." He reached up slowly and cupped her face in his hands, his touch achingly tender. "You were always meant to be mine, Esme Thorne. Every step of your journey, even the painful ones, brought you here. To me, to safety, to home." Tears spilled down her cheeks, and his thumbs brushed them away. "This child you carry will be mine in every way that matters," he continued, his voice dropping to a fierce whisper. "Not because of blood or biology, but because of choice. Because I choose you. I choose her. I choose this impossible, perfect bond between us." His forehead touched hers. "Let me choose you, Esme. Let me prove I'm worthy of the gift the goddess gave me when she sent you to my territory." Esme's hands came up to grip his wrists, anchoring herself to him. The mate bond was blazing between them now, warm and bright and perfect. "I'm scared," she admitted. "I know." His breath ghosted over her lips. "Be scared, but be scared here, with me. Let me protect you while you heal." And standing there on the balcony with the moonlight painting them silver and his hands cradling her face like she was something precious, Esme finally let herself hope. The market was a mistake. Esme realized it the moment she stepped out of the car Garrett had driven, but by then it was too late. The main pack market was bustling with activity, wolves shopping for food, clothes, and supplies, pups darting between stalls while their parents called after them. It should have been welcoming, normal. Instead, she felt every eye turned toward her. Conversations stuttered and died, whispers rippled through the crowd like wind through grass. "That's her, the pregnant Omega the king brought in. I heard she was exiled for treason, carrying another man's bastard, and he's claimed her anyway." Madness. Garrett's hand appeared at her elbow, steadying. "Ignore them," he said quietly. "They'll adjust." But Esme could feel the weight of their judgment, their curiosity, their disapproval. Her Omega instincts screamed at her to make herself small, to disappear, to submit until they stopped looking at her like she was a fascinating mistake. "Maybe this was a bad idea," she murmured. "Roman wanted you to feel free to move around the territory." Garrett guided her toward a produce stall, his presence solid and reassuring beside her. "You can't stay locked in his estate forever." Couldn't she? It had seemed safer there, cocooned away from the real world and its judgments. But Roman had been insistent that morning. She needed fresh air, needed to see the pack lands, needed to feel like she belonged here. "You do belong here," he'd said, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear with heartbreaking gentleness. "You're my mate. This is your territory now, too." The vendor at the produce stall was an older woman with shrewd eyes. She looked Esme up and down, taking in her obvious pregnancy, and her lips thinned. The king sent his pet shopping, did he? Garrett growled low in his throat, wolf rising in his eyes. That's your Luna you're speaking to. Show respect. The woman paled and immediately dropped her gaze. Apologies, Beta. I meant no offense. But the damage was done. Other vendors were watching now, calculating. Esme felt exposed and vulnerable despite Garrett's protective presence. Then the scent hit her, familiar and wrong, making her wolf snarl with recognition and fear. Nightshade pack. Esme spun around and her heart stopped. Victor stood 30 feet away, flanked by two of his enforcers. Her former alpha looked exactly as she remembered, tall and dark-haired with cold eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes locked onto her and his lip curled with contempt. Well, Victor drawled, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent market. The little trader has found herself a new protector. How convenient. Garrett stepped in front of Esme, his body language pure threat. You have no authority here, Victor. Leave. Now. I'm here on legitimate business, Victor replied smoothly. He pulled a rolled parchment from his jacket. The Nightshade Pack has filed a formal complaint with the Silverpaw Pack regarding stolen property. We're here to collect what's ours. Esme's blood went cold. Stolen property? You took 2 dresses, a necklace, and a silver hair comb when you fled our territory. Victor's smile was cruel. All pack property, distributed to members in good standing, which you were not when you left. He made a show of reading from the parchment. The Alpha King may have extended you protection, but he cannot shield you from legitimate theft claims. Come with us now, and we'll consider the matter settled. It was a lie. It had to be a lie. The clothes she'd been wearing when they cast her out had been her own, bought with her own money from her work in the pack nursery. She'd taken nothing. But Victor's eyes gleamed with malicious satisfaction. He knew Roman was in a council meeting, knew she was vulnerable, and had come specifically to terrorize her under the guise of legal action. She's not going anywhere, Garrett said flatly. If you have a legitimate complaint, you file it through proper channels with the Alpha King directly. You don't ambush his mate in the market. Several of the market vendors had drifted closer, watching the confrontation with avid interest. Esme could feel their judgment, their doubt. They didn't know her, didn't trust her. What if they believed Victor's lies? His mate? Victor laughed, the sound sharp and ugly. Is that what he's calling her? The pregnant Omega who spread her legs for a spy and got pack members killed? Esme flinched like he'd struck her. The words were weapons, designed to cut, and they found their mark perfectly. You will leave, Garrett commanded, his voice dropping to alpha resonance. Now, before I make you. Victor's enforcers tensed, hands moving toward weapons concealed beneath their jackets. The crowd scattered, parents grabbing pups and vendors ducking behind stalls. Violence hung in the air like an electric charge. Then Esme felt it. Roman's fury slamming through the mate bond with the force of a physical blow. His rage was incandescent, burning away everything else. He was coming, running. She could feel him getting closer with every heartbeat. Movement from the corner of her eye made Esme turn. One of Victor's enforcers had pulled a knife and was moving toward her with predatory speed, using the distraction of the confrontation. Assassin, her mind supplied with crystal clarity, not an enforcer at all. Esme stumbled backward, but the man was too fast, closing the distance in a blur. She saw the blade arc toward her stomach, toward her baby, and terror locked her muscles. Then Roman was there. He must have shifted mid-run because his massive wolf form hit the assassin like a freight train, jaws closing around the man's throat. The crunch of bone was sickeningly loud in the sudden silence. Roman's wolf was enormous, easily twice the size of a normal wolf, with midnight black fur and eyes that blazed with alpha power. He dropped the dead assassin and turned to face Victor with a snarl that made the ground tremble. Victor went white. His remaining enforcer took several hasty steps back, hands raised in surrender. My lord, I didn't authorize. Roman shifted back to human form in a ripple of power, not bothering with clothes, his naked body corded with muscle and violence. Blood stained his mouth, and his eyes were pure alpha gold, more wolf than man. You brought an assassin into my territory, Roman said softly, dangerously. Each word was precisely enunciated, which somehow made it more terrifying than shouting. You threatened my mate under the guise of legal action. You attempted to murder her and my child in broad daylight in front of witnesses. I didn't, Victor started. Silence. The alpha command in Roman's voice dropped every wolf in the market to their knees except Garrett. Even Victor's enforcer collapsed, submission forced through sheer dominance. You have committed an act of war, Victor of the Nightshade Pack. I should execute you where you stand. Victor's face was pressed to the ground, but Esme could see the fear rolling off him in waves. Good. Let him be terrified. Let him feel a fraction of what she'd felt when they'd thrown her out pregnant and helpless. Roman turned to look at her, and his expression softened marginally. Are you hurt? Esme shook her head, not trusting her voice. She was trembling head to foot, adrenaline making her dizzy. Roman's eyes traveled over her slowly, checking for injury, and apparently satisfied. He turned back to Victor. You will leave my territory immediately. You will take your dead assassin with you, and you will never ever set foot on Silverpaw lands again. If you do, I will consider it a declaration of war, and I will end you and every wolf loyal to you. Do I make myself clear? Yes, my lord, Victor gasped out, still pressed to the ground. Get out! Victor scrambled to his feet, grabbed his dead assassin by the collar, and fled with his remaining enforcer close behind. The moment they disappeared from sight, Roman strode to Esme and pulled her into his arms, still naked and blood-stained, but impossibly comforting. I felt your terror through the bond, he murmured into her hair. I've never run so fast in my life. Esme buried her face in his chest and finally let herself shake apart. He'd saved her, saved their baby. This fierce, powerful alpha had crossed the entire territory in minutes because she'd needed him. I've got you, Roman whispered fiercely. I've got you, and I'm never letting go. Around them, the market wolves were still kneeling, witnesses to their alpha king's claim. There would be no more whispers now, no more doubt. Roman had just declared to everyone watching that Esme was his in the most primal, undeniable way possible. And despite the terror still racing through her veins, despite the dead body bleeding out on the market stones, Esme felt safer than she'd ever felt in her life. The storm rolled in at midnight, turning the sky violent with lightning and thunder that shook the windows. Esme hadn't been able to sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw that knife arcing toward her stomach, felt the moment of helpless terror when she'd known she couldn't protect her baby. Roman had stationed guards outside her door, unnecessary, but he'd insisted, and had personally checked every window and lock in her suite before reluctantly leaving to handle the political fallout of Victor's attempted assassination. Now she lay in the massive bed alone, listening to rain hammer against glass, and tried to convince her racing heart to slow down. The cramping started gradually, just a tightness across her belly that came and went. Braxton Hicks, probably. Dr. Sarah had warned her about false labor contractions. But as minutes passed, the cramps intensified, coming more frequently. Esme's breath hitched as a particularly strong one squeezed her entire abdomen. No, please, not now, it's too early. Panic clawed at her throat. She was only 6 months along, the baby couldn't come now. She needed more time, needed to keep her daughter safe inside for at least another 2 months. Another contraction hit, and this time Esme cried out, hands flying to her belly. The door burst open immediately. Roman, barefoot and shirtless in hastily pulled-on pants, his hair wild and his eyes blazing gold. I felt your pain through the bond, he said, crossing to the bed in 3 long strides. What's wrong? Contractions. Esme's voice shook. They started maybe 10 minutes ago. They're getting worse. Roman's expression went sharp with worry. He pulled his phone from his pocket and barked orders. Get Dr. Sarah here immediately, no delays. Then he climbed onto the bed beside Esme and pulled her carefully into his arms, surrounding her with warmth and the scent of pine and winter wind. Breathe with me, he instructed calmly, though she could feel his fear through the bond. Slow and steady. Your body is responding to stress from the attack. We need to calm it down. Another contraction hit and Esme whimpered, curling into Roman's chest. He held her through it, one large hand splayed across her belly, the other stroking her hair. I've got you, he murmured. Just breathe. I'm right here. Dr. Sarah arrived within minutes, her medical bag in hand, and her expression professionally calm. She examined Esme quickly while Roman held her hand, and finally sat back with a relieved sigh. False labor, she confirmed. The stress from today's attack triggered your body's fight-or-flight response. The baby's fine, Esme. Her heartbeat is strong and she's not in distress. But you need rest, and you need to stay calm. Relief made Esme dizzy. She's okay? She's perfect. Dr. Sarah squeezed Esme's free hand. I'm going to give you something mild to help relax your muscles and ease the contractions. And Roman? She fixed the Alpha King with a stern look. You stay with her tonight. Your presence will help more than any medication I can provide. Roman nodded immediately. I'm not leaving. Dr. Sarah administered an injection that made the tight cramping ease almost immediately. She gave Roman detailed instructions about warning signs to watch for, made Esme promise to call if anything changed, and finally left them alone. The rain continued its assault on the windows. Lightning flashed, illuminating Roman's face in stark relief. He was still holding Esme, his arms wrapped around her like he could shield her from the entire world through sheer determination. I almost lost you today, he said quietly. I almost lost both of you, but you didn't. Esme turned in his arms so she could see his face properly. You saved us. I should have anticipated Victor would try something. Should have had more security on you. Should have... You can't predict everything. Esme reached up and touched his jaw, feeling the muscle jump beneath her fingers. You got there in time. That's what matters. Roman caught her hand and pressed it more firmly against his face, his eyes closing briefly. When I felt your fear through the bond, when I knew someone was trying to hurt you, something in me just snapped. I've never felt rage like that, never felt so desperate to reach someone. This bond, Esme whispered. I still don't understand it. Why us? Why now, when I'm carrying... It doesn't matter whose child you carry. Roman opened his eyes, and they were fierce and tender all at once. She's mine, Esme. From the moment I felt her kick beneath my hand, she became mine. Biology is just genetic material. Being a father is about choice, about showing up, about loving unconditionally. His thumb stroked over her knuckles. Let me be her father. Let me be your mate. Let me love you both the way you deserve. The walls Esme had built around her heart, the ones she'd constructed so carefully after Luca's betrayal, finally crumbled completely. This man, this powerful, lonely Alpha King, was offering her everything she'd thought lost forever: safety, acceptance, love. I'm scared, she admitted, her voice breaking. Luca destroyed my ability to trust. I gave him everything and he used it all as a weapon. What if I can't? What if I'm too broken to... You're not broken. Roman's voice was absolute certainty. You're hurt. There's a difference. Broken things can't heal. Hurt things can, with time and patience and care. He shifted so they were face to face on the pillow, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. I have all the time in the world, Esme. I'll wait as long as it takes. You deserve better than someone carrying another man's heir. I deserve you. He said it so simply, like it was just obvious fact. My mate. My perfect, brave, beautiful mate who survived betrayal and exile and still found the strength to keep going for her child. The moon goddess knew exactly what she was doing when she sent you to me. Tears spilled down Esme's cheeks, and Roman kissed them away, soft brushes of his lips against her skin. "Let me tell you something about my life," he said quietly. "I became Alpha King at 22 when my father died. For 12 years I've ruled alone. Every decision, every alliance, every execution, I've carried all of it by myself. I couldn't show weakness, couldn't trust freely, couldn't let anyone close enough to matter." He paused, his eyes searching hers. "I told myself I didn't need a mate, that the bond was a luxury I couldn't afford when leadership required such ruthless focus. I built walls higher than any fortress." His thumb traced the line of her jaw. "Then you collapsed at my border, pregnant and desperate, and those walls shattered. One look at you and my wolf howled mine with such force I couldn't breathe. You undid 12 years of isolation in a single moment." "Roman," Esme breathed, her heart aching. "I made an oath when I was young," he continued, "that I would never let politics dictate my heart, that when I found my mate, if I found my mate, I would claim her regardless of what anyone else thought. Regardless of consequences." His forehead touched hers. "So here's my truth, Esme Thorne. I'm already falling in love with you. Maybe I fell the moment our eyes met. And I want to be your daughter's father in every way that matters. I want to raise her as mine, protect her as mine, love her as mine." Esme couldn't breathe. The raw vulnerability in his voice, the fierce sincerity in his eyes. It was everything she'd dreamed of and been too terrified to hope for. "I don't know how to let you in," she whispered. "I don't know how to trust again." "Then start small." Roman's lips brushed against hers, feather light and questioning. "Trust me with this moment. Just this moment. Nothing more." And in the storm-dark bedroom with rain hammering the windows and his arms wrapped around her, Esme finally let herself take that leap. She closed the distance between them and kissed him properly, pouring 12 years of his loneliness and her desperate hope and the impossible bond thrumming between them into that single point of contact. Roman made a sound low in his throat and deepened the kiss, one hand cradling the back of her head while the other splayed protectively across her belly. He kissed her like she was precious, like she was everything, like he would spend the rest of his life proving his promises true. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Roman pressed his forehead to hers. "This child will be mine in every way that matters," he whispered fiercely. "I'll be there for every kick, every craving, every moment of the birth. I'll be there for her first shift, her first words, her first heartbreak. She'll grow up knowing she's wanted and loved and protected." "How can you promise that?" Esme's voice cracked. "You barely know me. I know enough." His eyes blazed with conviction. "I know you're my mate. I know my soul recognized yours. And I know I'll spend the rest of my life being worthy of the gift the goddess gave me when she sent you to my territory." Outside, lightning split the sky. Thunder shook the windows. And in Roman's arms, for the first time since Luca had destroyed her world, Esme finally felt safe enough to believe. The war room was silent, except for the crackle of fire in the hearth and the steady drum of Roman's fingers against the oak table. Maps sprawled across the surface, marked with territorial boundaries and patrol routes. His most trusted warriors surrounded him: Garrett, Lydia, and 3 elite fighters who'd served his family for decades. Roman's public rejection of Esme had been broadcast to every pack within 100 miles. He'd stood before witnesses and declared her nothing to him, his voice cold and his eyes empty. The words had tasted like poison, each syllable a blade through his own heart. But he'd felt Esme's terror through the bond, felt her location like a compass needle pointing north, and he'd known what had to be done. Buy time, appear to comply, find her, bring her home. "The surveillance team confirmed the location an hour ago," Garrett reported, pointing to a section of map marked in red. "The old ruins on the eastern edge of Darius's territory. They're holding her in what used to be a silver storage vault. The entire structure is lined with the stuff." Roman's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached. Silver. They'd put his pregnant mate in a silver-lined cell where the metal would burn her skin and weaken her wolf. The rage that had been simmering since the kidnapping roared to life again, his wolf snarling for blood. "How many guards?" His voice came out perfectly level despite the fury coursing through his veins. 12 visible, probably more hidden. Lydia traced patrol patterns on the map with one finger. "They're expecting retaliation, but they think you'll come through the front, a show of force. They won't expect a stealth approach." "Then that's what we'll give them." Roman's eyes glowed gold in the firelight. "We go in at dawn when the night guards are tired and the day shift hasn't arrived yet. Garrett, you take Team 1 through the north approach. Lydia, Team 2 from the south. I'll take the direct route with Marcus and Thorne." "That puts you in the most danger," Garrett protested. "Let me lead the direct assault." "She's my mate." Roman's alpha command rippled through the room, brooking no argument. "I will be the one to bring her home." Through the bond, he could feel Esme's exhaustion, her fear, the dull ache of silver burns. But underneath it all, burned her fierce determination to survive, to protect their child. His brave, stubborn mate refused to break even in captivity. "Hold on," he sent through the bond, not knowing if she could hear him. "I'm coming." Dawn painted the sky in shades of blood and gold as Roman's strike team moved through the wilderness at the edge of Darius's territory. They'd shifted to wolf form for speed and silence, 6 massive shapes flowing through the forest like shadows. Roman led them, his black fur blending with the pre-dawn darkness, every sense focused on the ruins ahead. He could smell Esme now, her scent cutting through the morning air like a beacon, lavender and rain, overlaid with the acrid tang of fear and silver burns. His wolf howled silently, demanding her immediate rescue, demanding retribution against everyone who'd hurt her. Soon, Roman promised both his wolf and his mate. The ruins appeared through the trees, ancient stone structures half reclaimed by forest growth. Darius had stationed guards at obvious entry points, but they were focused outward, watching for an army approach. They never saw the 6 wolves slip through gaps in the crumbling walls, silent as death. Roman heard Garrett's signal, a low howl that meant his team was in position. Lydia answered from the south. Then Roman gave the order with a snarl that sent his own team surging forward. The guards died quickly. Roman's jaws closed around the first one's throat before the man could cry out, while Marcus and Thorne eliminated the others with brutal efficiency. More guards poured from the ruins' interior, but Roman was already moving, following Esme's scent deeper into the structure. A wolf lunged at him from the shadows, one of Darius's elite fighters, larger than average and well-trained. Roman didn't slow down. He hit the wolf mid-leap and they went down in a tangle of fur and fangs. The other wolf was strong, fast, skilled. It didn't matter. Roman fought with the desperation of a mate denied access to his bonded partner, his fury making him unstoppable. He tore through the wolf's defenses and left him bleeding in the dust. More enemies appeared. Roman carved through them like a force of nature, his wolf completely in control and absolutely merciless. Blood stained his muzzle. Bodies littered his path. Nothing would stand between him and Esme. Nothing. Then he was there, a heavy wooden door reinforced with silver bars. His wolf recoiled from the metal's touch, but Roman forced himself forward, shifting to human form and wrapping his hands in torn fabric before wrenching the door open. Silver burned through the makeshift protection, but he barely felt it. Esme lay curled on the stone floor, her arms wrapped protectively around her belly. Silver burns marked her exposed skin, wrists, ankles, one cheek where she'd pressed against the wall. Her clothes were torn and her face was pale, but her eyes were open and blazing with defiant fury when they met his. "Did you really think I could ever let you go?" Roman's voice came out rough with emotion. "Roman." Her voice cracked on his name. "The baby. I know. I feel her through you." He crossed to her in 3 strides and gathered her carefully into his arms, mindful of the burns and her pregnant belly. She was lighter than she should be. They'd barely fed her. More rage to add to the tally. I've got you now. You're safe. Esme's arms came around his neck and she buried her face against his shoulder. He felt her shoulders shake with silent sobs, felt the overwhelming relief and residual terror flooding through their bond. Roman pressed his face into her hair and breathed in her scent, letting it anchor him, letting it remind him that she was alive and in his arms and nothing else mattered. We need to move. Garrett's voice came from the doorway. His beta was back in human form, blood-stained and grim. Reinforcements are coming. Darius himself is leading them. Roman stood smoothly, cradling Esme against his chest. Then we leave. Now. They moved through the ruins at a dead run, Garrett and the others forming a protective circle around Roman and Esme. Darius's reinforcements caught them at the edge of the territory line, 20 wolves against Roman's 6. The odds should have been impossible. Roman set Esme down behind a fallen tree, made her promise to stay hidden, and shifted. His wolf was massive and enraged, alpha power radiating from him in waves that made even Darius's strongest fighters hesitate. When he let out a howl, it carried the full force of his dominance, and 3 of the enemy wolves immediately submitted, dropping to the ground with whines of surrender. The battle was vicious and desperate. Roman fought like something possessed, protecting the spot where Esme hid with single-minded ferocity. Garrett and Lydia fought at his flanks, their coordination perfect after years of training together. Marcus and Thorn held the rear, preventing enemies from flanking. Then Roman saw Darius himself, a gray wolf with cruel yellow eyes, breaking through the line and heading straight for Esme's hiding spot. Everything else ceased to matter. Roman launched himself across the battlefield with a snarl that shook the trees, intercepting Darius mid-leap. They collided with bone-jarring force. Darius was a powerful alpha in his own right, his strength considerable, his experience extensive. But Roman had something Darius didn't, the mate bond burning in his chest like a second sun, amplifying his power, making him faster and stronger and absolutely unstoppable when his mate was threatened. Roman's jaws locked around Darius's throat and squeezed. The other alpha thrashed, desperate, his claws raking furrows through Roman's shoulders. Roman didn't let go. He tasted blood, felt the moment Darius's struggles weakened, and finally released him with a warning snarl that promised death if he ever came near Esme again. The remaining enemy wolves fled. Roman didn't pursue. He shifted back to human form, ignoring his wounds, and returned to Esme. She was exactly where he'd left her, one hand pressed to her belly, and her eyes wide with awe. "You could have died," she whispered. "Not while you need me." Roman gathered her back into his arms. "Come on. Let's go home." The sacred Luna temple was older than memory, built from white stone that seemed to glow in moonlight. Esme stood in its center, surrounded by pillars carved with ancient wolf imagery, and tried to understand what Elder Mira was telling her. "You carry Luna powers," the old woman repeated patiently. She was the same elder who'd found Esme at the border that first night, her hawk-sharp eyes missing nothing. "Dormant until now because you never believed yourself worthy of such gifts." "I'm just an Omega," Esme protested. She'd been back in Roman's territory for 2 days, recovering from her ordeal. The silver burns were healing and the baby was fine. Dr. Sarah had confirmed it repeatedly. But now Mira spoke of powers and prophecies, and things that seemed impossible. "You were never just anything." Roman's voice came from behind her. He'd been present for this revelation, insisting on staying at her side. Now he moved to stand beside her, his hand finding hers. "The moon goddess doesn't make mistakes, Esme. If you carry Luna powers, it's because you were always meant to. But I don't know how to use them. I don't even know what they are." "Protection magic," Mira said, circling them slowly. "The rarest of Luna gifts. You can shield those under your care, can heal emotional wounds, can create barriers that repel dark magic." She stopped in front of Esme, her expression intense. "The prophecy spoke of you. The child you carry will unite two bloodlines, and the king who claims what is not his by blood will break the ancient curse. But the prophecy has more. The Luna who finds her worth will shield her people, and through her power, all wolves shall be freed. Esme's hands trembled. I don't know how. Yes, you do. Roman turned her to face him, his winter-gray eyes blazing with conviction. You've been protecting our daughter since the moment you knew she existed. You survived exile to keep her safe. You endured captivity rather than break. You already know how to protect. You just need to extend that instinct outward. The mate bond will help, Mira added. Your powers and Roman's alpha dominance will amplify each other. Together, you're stronger than either of you could be alone. Over the next 3 days, Esme trained. It was frustrating and exhausting, and occasionally terrifying when her powers flared unexpectedly. But Roman stayed at her side through all of it, his presence grounding her, his faith in her abilities unwavering. Focus on what you want to protect, he instructed as they stood in the training grounds. Pack members watched from a safe distance, witnesses to their Luna learning her gifts. Feel the bond between us, let it guide your magic. Esme closed her eyes and reached for that golden thread connecting her heart to Roman's. It sang between them, warm and bright and perfect. She thought about the baby growing inside her, about the pack members who'd begun to accept her, about this territory that was slowly becoming home. She thought about protecting them all. Power surged through her veins like liquid sunlight. Esme gasped and opened her eyes to see golden light rippling outward from her body, forming a shimmering barrier that encompassed the entire training ground. Pack members inside the barrier felt it. She could see the wonder on their faces as her protection magic washed over them, soothing and safe. Incredible, Lydia breathed. The barrier held for 30 seconds before Esme's concentration broke and it dissolved. She swayed, suddenly exhausted, and Roman caught her immediately. I did it, she whispered in amazement. You did. He pressed a kiss to her forehead, pride and love flooding through their bond. My powerful, perfect mate. That evening, Roman led her to his private office. Esme had been inside before, but tonight felt different. Ceremonial somehow. He closed the door and turned to face her, his expression serious. I need to ask you something, he said quietly, and I need you to answer honestly. Esme's heart kicked into a faster rhythm. What is it? Roman crossed to her slowly, then did something that shocked her into stillness. He dropped to one knee, taking both her hands in his. The Alpha King knelt before her, vulnerability and hope written across his face. Esme Thorne, you stumbled into my territory carrying another man's heir and completely upended my world. You showed me what I'd been missing, not just a mate bond, but connection, trust, love. His thumbs stroked over her knuckles. You've survived betrayal and exile. You've discovered powers you never knew you possessed. You've become everything this pack needs in a Luna. He paused, his eyes blazing with emotion. Be my queen, not just my mate, but my partner in ruling. Stand beside me and help me lead our people. Let me spend the rest of my life being worthy of you. Tears spilled down Esme's cheeks. 2 months ago, she'd been cast out and hopeless. Now the most powerful alpha in the territories knelt before her, asking her to be his queen. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, always yes. Roman surged to his feet and kissed her deeply, pouring 12 years of loneliness and fierce joy into the connection. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, he rested his forehead against hers. My queen, he murmured. My Luna. Mine. Yours, Esme agreed, and finally believed it. The attack came 3 days later, just before dawn. Scouts reported the approaching army first. Darius and Victor had formed an alliance, rallying every wolf loyal to them for one final assault on Roman's territory. They came from the north in a wave of fur and fury, Easily 200 strong. Roman's pack numbered half that. But they had something the enemy didn't: unity, strategy, and a Luna whose protection magic could shield them from the worst of the assault. Esme stood at Roman's side as they watched the enemy approach from the high ground near the pack house. Her 7-month belly was obvious beneath the protective armor Garrett had insisted she wear, but her eyes were steady and her hands didn't shake. "You don't have to do this," Roman said quietly. "You could stay behind where it's safe. I'm your Luna." Esme's voice was steel wrapped in silk. "My place is beside you." Roman's eyes blazed with pride and love and something fiercer than both. He took her hand and raised it to his lips. "Then we fight together." The battle began with a howl that shook the earth. Roman's warriors met the enemy charge head-on, while Esme focused her power, creating barriers that protected vulnerable positions. Her magic shimmered gold in the early light, beautiful and deadly. Enemy wolves who hit her barriers were thrown back, stunned. Roman fought at the front lines, his massive black wolf form devastating. But whenever an enemy got too close to Esme, he was there in seconds, protecting his mate with single-minded ferocity. Then Esme felt it, something dark and wrong pulsing beneath the battlefield. Ancient magic that made her skin crawl and her wolf whimper. She gasped and stumbled, her concentration breaking. "What is it?" Roman was at her side immediately, shifted back to human form, his eyes blazing with concern. "There's something here," Esme managed. "Something old. Dark magic binding the earth itself." Elder Mira appeared from the pack house, moving faster than her apparent age should allow. "The curse!" she said urgently. "You're sensing the curse that has plagued our kind for generations." "What curse?" "A blood curse cast by a jealous witch centuries ago, preventing true mate bonds from forming freely." Mira's eyes were wild. "It's weakened over time but never broken. Until now." She grabbed Esme's shoulders. "Your bond with Roman, a pregnant Omega and the king who claimed her child as his own? It's the paradox the curse couldn't account for. Your love is breaking it." Esme felt it then, the bond between her and Roman blazing bright enough to burn. She reached for his hand, and power surged through their connection, amplified by their joined strength. Her protection magic transformed into something more, something that could heal, could purify, could break ancient curses. "Help me," she gasped. Roman understood immediately. He pulled her against his chest, one hand splayed over their daughter, the other clasped with Esme's. Their bond blazed like the sun, and Esme channeled that power down into the earth, into the dark magic poisoning it. The curse fought back. Curse fought. Esme screamed as pain lanced through her body, but Roman's arms held her steady, his strength anchoring her. Together they pushed harder, their combined power overwhelming the ancient magic. With a sound like thunder, the curse shattered. Magic rippled outward from where they stood, a golden wave that spread across territories and packlands for hundreds of miles. Esme felt it touch every wolf within range, felt the curse's chains fall away, felt true mate bonds snap into place for wolves who'd been denied them for generations. Across the battlefield, enemy and ally alike stopped fighting as the wave of magic washed over them. Darius staggered, his wolf form flickering. Victor collapsed to his knees. "It's done," Elder Mira whispered in awe. "The curse is broken." Roman held Esme as she swayed with exhaustion, his eyes blazing gold with triumph and fierce pride. On the battlefield, Darius's forces were retreating, their alliance crumbling as wolves who'd been denied true bonds suddenly felt them snap into place with packmates, drawing loyalty away from false leaders. Victor tried to rally his wolves, but Garrett was there, his beta dominance crushing the other alpha's will. "You've lost," Garrett snarled. "Surrender or die." Victor's submission was bitter, but absolute. As the sun rose fully over the battlefield, Esme stood wrapped in Roman's arms and felt the mate bond between them singing with perfect harmony. They'd won. the pack was safe, the curse was broken, and their daughter kicked hard, as if celebrating the victory. Our daughter will grow up in a world where true mates can find each other freely, Roman murmured against Esme's hair. Because of you. Because of us. Esme turned in his arms and kissed him deeply, tasting victory and love and the promise of their future. Around them, the pack began to cheer, for their Alpha King, for their Luna, for the impossible bond that had saved them all. The prophecy was fulfilled, and their story was just beginning.